Hello. Want to say greetings to all of you in this course. I know we really haven't had the opportunity to interact with each other much. My name is Andrew Wright the first. Um, for this lecture topic, I really want to talk about oral history and how it relates um, to the history field and what are some of its limitations. Um, when it comes to how we can better ourselves through history and be better history students, be better professors who teach history, and overall, what is the benefit of and some of the negatives of oral history presentations and all that stuff. So a lot of times I'll say this about oral history. The one of the things that I like about oral history is that it gives us an opportunity to interview people and get different perspective and different opinions about topics that are going on today, or the topics that happen within a certain time frame. For example, if you were doing um, a research paper on the Vietnam War or Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield, you could easily find, at least in the Desert Storm and Desert Shield portion of it, you could easily find a veteran, do an interview with them. You can get firsthand accounts about the battles and the preparations for the battles and how the war turned out for them. You can also get some personal perspectives from that person about how it is important to be ready and to maintain your vehicles because as we know Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield is very much a mechanized slash armor slash tank battle. The infantry, artillery, and those people, those other MOS, they didn't really play a large role in the initial push. That was definitely one for the mechanized or heavy infantry and for the tank units. So those are some of the things I think are important when it comes to oral history is that it gives the historian an opportunity to get firsthand account for whatever subjects he's looking for. Um, and you have to weigh that versus um, primary source material. One of the things that we learned at the undergraduate level and even at when we were obtaining our masters is the importance of primary source material. Myself being a military historian, my master's background is in ancient warfare, and it was vital to get primary source material because that substituted the oral portion. It was no because of the route that I chose. The As far as ancient warfare, it was not necessary for me to get to dive into oral interviews and to do interviews in one because there was no one obviously alive to do that. So I had to rely on primary sources in order to fulfill that void. That's one of the issues I'll have with oral history is that it limits itself to a certain time frame. It limits itself to a certain area within history. And what I mean when I say that is when you do as when we're given an assignment to go do an interview, um, we have to find someone that is pertinent and find somebody that's relevant to a source for us that is time sensitive, so to speak. So now, if you are someone who is interested in ancient history or ancient warfare or um, ancient buildings, ancient architecture, then you cannot go do an interview with somebody and expect to get the same background that you would using primary sources. Now you can go interview somebody who is a professional historian or who has um, interest and background doing research about ancient history, but you're not going to get the same type of um, insight as you would by simply finding a primary source manuscript primary source book written by someone of in the ancient times. So I think that oral history, although it is very important and it works out for us when it comes to this time frame, it limits us to what we can research and what we can study, um, because we obviously can't, and we obviously cannot, like I said, interview someone for ancient history material unless we're just trying to get their secondhand account. And like I said, which in any case we can always go back and look at a primary source material. That's not to say that oral history is not important when it comes to ancient history. I just think that one of the, and this is another source, another thing I wanted to talk about. When you look at the landscape of history right now, for those who are trying to get their doctorate, those who are going to graduate school, and with hopes of getting their PhD, a lot of them, I would say a good majority of them, want to get into the academic field. And the way things are today, um, ancient history has kind of taken a back seat to U.S. history, U.S. history two, um, modern history. Um, it's the fields that are being offered now that are filling up. When you go do an interview with someone and you tell them, "Oh, I have ancient history background," um, a lot of times that's shunned upon and frowned upon. When you look at somebody who comes and says, "Oh, I have a modern history background and my history is in, U.S. history or something that is more current," and a lot of that has to do with your research methods, and with today's world. When you think about today's society, you're going to be teaching young students who are 18, 19, all the way up to 21. Now you can always get those those non-traditional students who come in and they're older and maybe they joined the military first and they came back. You can always get those older students who took a different path, but you're finding out a lot more that people are more interested in modern history when it comes to who they may hire, um, and it's unfortunate, and that plays back into um, what you can use it for, and if you there's plenty of things you can use an ancient history degree for. And I digress 'cause I don't want to get too far off the subject, but I want to say that it's in the same realm of oral history. The way I look at my own personal field of warfare, of military history, is that oral history is very important, but you have to ask yourself, at what phase can I use it, and at what time frame can I use it? Now we look at this current course here, and we say, oh well, we're in um, a public history class, and that's great. You absolutely can go and do interviews with people and find out more information about public history and local history, especially local history, because the good thing about these places in Kansas is we don't have a ton of big metropolitan areas. I would make the argument that probably Topeka, Wichita, um, and Kansas City are only the only three major cities in the entire state of Kansas where I live. And so the majority of Kansas is a lot of smaller places. And so you have people who live there 30, 40, 50 years. So it is very vital and important and interesting to go interview some of these people and ask them about the local history. My personal um, project for this semester was Brown versus Board of Education. And the good thing about that, being local history, is when I researched that there's people who were still alive, because Brown versus Board of Education was not that long ago in history. Um, so there's people who were absolutely alive. My father and mother were alive during the Brown versus Board of Education. Many people who lived in Topeka during that time, and can tell you what was going on and what led to it. But I would say that if you're trying to, my big thing is about oral interviews is that it just limits itself to the type of history that you're looking up. And so it's That's why I like the history that I teach. I'm currently a professor at Ottawa University and Kansas City Community College here in Kansas, and it is my favorite course that I teach are ancient history, and of course that's just not something you can go tell someone to do an interview on. Um, but I will say this is that I believe that interviews are something that is very important to history. I don't ever want to give the impression I don't believe oral interviews are important to history. They are. They are very important. The issue is when you use oral history, when you use interviews as an assignment, then you're limiting what someone can interview about. And that's my take on oral interviews. And I hope you guys enjoy this. Look forward to reading your comments and reading the other lectures for this week.